Tonight's tale comes from a netizen we'll simply call Qiang. It's the strangest thing he encountered on the job. Qiang is a Tianjin, born child of the 80s through and through. When Qiang was a sophomore, the grandfather who had raised him since he was 3 passed away from cancer. From the age of 3, all the way to university, Qiang had slept in the very same room as his grandfather. The old man treated him like treasure, and the bond between them was deep as roots. When cancer took the old man, Qiang was shattered. He fell seriously ill, fever so high that by the end he had lost every trace of smell and taste. The world went bland. After more than a week of fever, one night he dreamed of his grandfather. In the dream, Grandpa led him through the courtyard of his childhood, tending pots of flowers, chatting softly, then stopped at a single blooming jasmine. Grandpa said, "Leon and Anne really smell this. This flower is fragrant." In the dream, Qiang lifted his nose, took a deep, deliberate breath, and drank in the jasmine's perfume. The scent burst forth, sweet, clean, filling his chest like cold water. Suddenly, he jolted awake, drenched in sweat from head to toe. His limbs felt heavy, yet his mind was crystal clear. His family was stunned and relieved to discover the fever had finally broken. And from that moment on, his lost senses didn't just return, they sharpened. His nose became almost unnaturally acute. He gained a new gift. Step into any room where someone has recently died, and he'll catch a peculiar odor, neither mold nor damp, yet somehow both. He can even feel the scent drifting slowly across the space, like a silent current. He calls it the smell of a living soul. In plain words, he can sense the presence of something ghost-like without ever opening his third eye. But as they say back home, people born under his 8-character system sign tend to draw such things closer. After college in 2004, he walked straight into one of Tianjin's top real estate appraisal firms and earned his certified valuer's license. To this day, he's still with that same company, 20+ years and counting. He's gone from green rookie to industry heavyweight. When it comes to social impact surveys or demolition appraisals, his name carries serious weight. Skills, connections, track record, everything about him rings solid. Year after year, he racks up accolades. He's heard and seen more than his share. The story happened shortly after he started working, utterly bizarre. Fresh on the payroll, Qiang was sent with several colleagues to survey old neighborhoods, photographing, measuring, logging every crack and corner. Though the newest hire, he learned fast, endured heat and cold, and was meticulous to a full, quickly earning nods from bosses and peers alike. At the time, the firm had landed a huge tangled project, the demolition of a whole urban village block of old single-story homes. It was brutal work. So management formed 8 field teams. 16 staff, 8 men, 8 women. Each pair was 1 man, 1 woman. 8 pairs fanned out across 530 houses slated for the wrecking ball. Qiang's partner was a colleague named Yu, 3 years his senior. She was the seasoned hand. He was the rookie tagging along. They started at the crack of dawn. Qiang took the photos and marked every door, window, and wall on the master plan. Yu filled out forms, ownership, dimensions, angles. The schedule was reverse engineered from the demolition date tight as a drum. Pressure like a vice. Lose one day, and the whole chain reaction squeezed tighter. And the job always landed in extreme scorching August or biting January. This round it was mid-August, the furnace of summer, and the houses were low brick cubes offering zero shade. They stepped inside only long enough for a quick shutter, click, and a scribble. Around 10:30 that morning, they finally wrapped the first row. Heat shimmered off the pavement. They gulped water, caught their breath, and pushed on. It was roughly 35 degrees Celsius, and the sun pounded on their shoulders like a hammer and anvil. Just as they rounded the corner into the next hutong, Qiang felt the air plummet in temperature. Coolness washed over him in an instant. The sticky heat vanished as if someone had flipped a switch. He grinned, pulled out a bottle of water and said, let's cool off." They drank quickly while Qiang scanned the alley. They stood in a narrow strip between two rows of houses. No shade, only an old locust tree at the far corner, too distant to cover them. And its leaves weren't even stirring. How could it be this cold? Odd. Yu's mind was still on a checklist. She sipped while flipping pages, ticking boxes. "Qiang, we need to pick up the pace. We've only done 18 houses, at 70 per team. We should clear the next entire route before lunch. Drink up, let's roll." Qiang downed to gulps, checked the camera, battery 80%. Still plenty of juice. Remember, this was 2004. Memory cards were pricey and tiny. They always shot on the lowest resolution to stretch storage. One card held maybe 500 or 600 shots. So he kept one eye on the counter like a pilot watching fuel. He saw fewer than 400 frames left. 6 houses at 8 shots each, cutting it close. Yu laid down the plan, skip exterior walls. Shoot gate, yard, doors, windows, inner walls. Not every house will be occupied. We'll make the card last. They reached the first yard, behind the locust tree. Gate shut, but not locked. Qiang climbed the step and rapped on the old iron sheet. No reply. He double-checked the number. Row 4, alley 2, number 16. The plan showed a stand, a lone property, single household, owner listed as Z. He called out, "Anyone home at number 16? Mrs. Z." Before he could shout again, Yu tugged his sleeve. "Look closer, don't call." She thrust the detail sheet under his nose. There it was, owner deceased. At that moment, green as he was, Qiang's heart skipped. He took 2 instinctive steps backward. His eyes darted left and right. Luckily, the gate stayed shut. No one came to answer. They waited a little longer, nothing but cicadas in the heat. They agreed, skip for now, and move on to the next yard on the list. After wrap number 14, they stepped back into the lane heading for number 12. Then from behind, a voice called his name. "Young man, are you from the demolition team?" He turned, and there, under the huge locust tree at number 16, stood an old woman. She was slightly hunched, small, thin, her hair snow white and her face mapped with wrinkles. She had to be well into her 80s, yet her features were gentle grandmother kind. The moment Qiang faced her, she spoke again. "Ah, young fellow." She pointed a thin finger at him. "You're with the demolition, yes?" Yu hurried down the steps number 14 and approached the old woman. "We're surveyors for the appraisal team. Do you live here in the lane?" The woman stayed half hidden behind the trunk, only part of her body visible. She gestured toward number 16. "Nobody's home till after 5. Come back this afternoon." With that, she turned slow, shuffling steps, and disappeared around the corner. The two looked at each other. "We'll swing by after 5. Pressed for time. They had no choice but to march on to number 12. Yard by yard measuring, logging, photographing. By the time they stepped out of the final number 2, the sun was nearly overhead, almost noon, and they felt they'd kept to schedule. They were ready to regroup with the other teams for lunch. Just then, the middle-aged owner of number 2 stepped out after them. "Did you just stop at the stand-alone house at the far end?" Qiang answered. "You mean number 16, Mrs. Z's place behind the locust tree?" An old lady told us no one's home until after 5. We've got the owner listed as deceased. Who lives there now? The man was a talker. Mrs. Z, she's gone. Her son clocks off work and comes by evenings. Surname Qiang, nice fellow. We're on friendly terms. Then he lowered his voice, like an older neighbor warning the kids. When you step inside, be careful. Mrs. Z's only been gone 6 months. Word is she took her own life over the demolition. I don't know the details. They say her portrait's still on the altar. Mind your manners. Go while the sun's up. Don't linger after dark. At that moment his wife hollered from inside. Lee, quit the ghost stories. It's none of your business. The man flushed, gave an awkward chuckle. Just looking out for them, that's all. Anyway, take care. Qiang and you exchanged glances, tempted to press for more. But the wife dragged him back inside for lunch. They looked at each other again, and an uneasy feeling now lodged between them. At the communal lunch table, conversation drifted. Someone piped up. Heard your lane has a haunted house. Did you see it? Both froze mid-chew. Which house? The colleague shrugged. While we were working, a resident told us row for rent house. Old lady hanged herself last November. Inside the house, which one? You pressed. But Qiang's stomach dropped. He already knew Mrs. C. Not sure the number, but it's the standalone at the end locust tree out front. A chill ran down Qiang's spine, exact match. The colleague leaned in, lowering his voice. They say, ever since. Neighbors hear noises at night, footsteps, coughing, the whole works. And the lights flick on when no one's home. Her son swears he only visits afternoons to light, and since never stays the night. So, after dark, the place is empty, officially empty. Qiang's hair stood on end. Yet the job sheet still read, number 16 row for mandatory. That afternoon, hearts in their throats. They forced themselves through the remaining houses, yard by yard, form by form. Along the way, they pieced together bits and pieces about Mrs. Z's life and death. By late afternoon, they got some information about Mrs. Z. It was such a tragedy, because her husband died in wartime. Mrs. Z had been widowed young. She was only 21, already carrying their child as unborn into absence. After liberation, the neighborhood committee saw her struggle, single, penniless, baby at her hip, and gave her a job. Folding paper boxes for pennies. The pay was pitiful, yet she folded and glued until her fingers bled, determined to raise the boy. That boy, surnamed Qiang, was bright, top of his class from primary school on. But high school collided with the cultural special period. Like countless youths, he was sent to the countryside. There he met a girl, married, had a child, life sprouting in hard soil. Years later, the family of four returned to Tianjin at last under one roof. They squeezed into the small stand-alone at row for number 16. Young Jiang's education paid off. He landed a factory post with decent wages. His wife, through the neighborhood office, got a milk delivery route. The money wasn't grand, but it was steady. They could finally care for the old lady and the boy. Then fate dealt its cruelest card. One afternoon, the grandson, the school let out early, burst through the gate. Grandma, I want the sweet and sour egg dumplings Mom makes. Can you make them for me? I'm starving. Grandma rarely cooked the dish. The daughter-in-law usually handled it. And in that innocent request lay tragedy. Sugar was missing from the shelf. The pantry was bare. Mrs. Z, without thinking, reached for saccharine white crystals. Not quite the same. The child ate, collapsed, and by nightfall was gone. They pronounced him that same evening. Saccharin orthobenzoyl sulfamide, already a class 3 carcinogen. In excess, lethal. Worse, when heated with eggs it forms a toxic compound. The reaction creates lysine poison to his small body. Severe poisoning, seizures, and then silence. Mrs. Z hadn't known, couldn't have known, and the guilt carved her hollow. The mother collapsed at the hospital, wailing until her voice cracked. Mrs. Z blamed herself with every breath. Shame wrapped her like a shroud. But the child was gone. Tears became her daily bread. Hardest of all was the father Qiang caught between grief for his son and grief for his mother. He bore the double weight, burying a child, steadying a wife, soothing a mother. The house became a tomb of memories. Every brick and teacup reminded them of what was lost. They fled to rented rooms elsewhere. Then, a year ago, the notice came. Demolition redevelopment, someone had to stay. The daughter-in-law was unwilling to return to the house. So Mrs. Z had to go there instead. Every evening after shift, Qiang shuttled between his wife and his mother. He cooked, cleaned for her mother, then boarded the bus back to the rent house across town. Qiang, and you never did learn down to the last rumor. Why 6 months earlier Mrs. Z had chosen to end her life by hanging inside her own home. In any case, the afternoon blurred by, and suddenly the hands on their watches crept toward 5. They stepped out of the final courtyard, clipboards full, shirts stuck to their backs. They exchanged a quick fist bump, half bravado, half prayer, with courage borrowed from each other. Hearts thudding, they walked the last dusty stretch to the iron gate of row for number 16. At the gate, Qiang raised his hand and knocked 6 sharp taps against cold metal. He didn't call out. A full minute passed in silence. Oddly, he felt a flicker of relief. Nobody home. Problem postponed. He glanced at you and her face mirrored the same guilty gratitude. Not our fault, they told themselves, turning to leave. Then, from behind, a calm male voice. You're the appraisal team, right? Exactly what they feared now standing there. Yes, yes, we are, Qiang answered. Which house do you live in? You asked. The man replied. I live right here at number 16. My mother's surname was C. He fished out a key. The lock clicked, and the gate yawned open as he ushered them inside. Qiang swallowed hard. Inside lay 3 red brick cottages, time-worn, their facades mottled with age. From the window ledges downward, pale moss streaked the walls. Near the base, salt blooms traced a white tide mark. The courtyard floor was laid with old red bricks, still orderly, but sunken and chipped by decades of feet. You drew a steadying breath, flashed her ID and asked, May we have your name? We're in charge of the demolition appraisal. What relation are you to the registered owner? She raised a blank survey sheet and pen ready to record every word. The man answered softly, My surname is Qiang. Mrs. Z was my mother. She passed last year. His voice dipped, laden with unspoken weight. Qiang felt the heaviness settle in his own chest. You continued, Mr. Qiang, we'll need the deed to verify ownership and note the house's condition. We'll be as quick as we can. No problem, he said. The deed's inside. We saw the notice, everything's ready. He pushed open the main door, motioning them to enter. Qiang stalled. Mr. Qiang, we also need to photograph the door plate for later reference. Let me take that first. In fact, he dreaded stepping inside. This was the house everyone whispered about. Go ahead, Mr. Qiang said, patient. He stepped in first, turned on the lights, and pushed the windows wide. He called back, Come in, it's cooler inside. I've switched on the AC. Have some water. Take your time. You hesitated on the threshold, fingers tight around her clipboard. Qiang met her eyes, swallowed once and murmured, Let's go in together. The instant Kong stepped inside, a cold shock snapped up his spine. Something was here. He froze dead center in the living room, as though an unseen hand had clamped his shoulder. A smell hit him, neither mold nor damp, but a sour stale breath that was both alien and intimately familiar. His mind flashed one sentence. Apart from the three of us breathing, something else is in this room. The odor greeted him at the door, not sharp, yet impossible to ignore, mingled with the faint, sweet ghost of incense smoke. Qiang's pulse began to drum. He suddenly remembered. Someone had died here 6 months ago, and the soul had never left. Those rumors lights, flicking on at night, weren't rumors at all. One thought blazed. Get in, get the shots, get out fast. At that moment, Mr. Qiang stepped in and with a casual flick, snapped on the overhead light. A dusty fluorescent tube buzzed to life, bathing the room in a thin, bluish glow. Kong veered wide around the altar, camera raised, snapping to quick frames, aperture blinking like a nervous eye. Just as he lowered the camera, ready to tuck it away, a sharp gasp from Yu sliced the silence. He spun toward her. He saw Yu's face drained of color, clipboard trembling in her grip, gaze locked on the altar. Her jaw clenched. Qiang's own panic flared. What's wrong? Following her stare, he found the framed portrait. Black and white-haired, thin-cheeked, his breath hitched. The face was etched with each, yet kindness pulled in every line. It was the very same woman who had called to them that morning beneath the locust tree. A single glance at Yu confirmed it, no doubt. The same elder had spoken to them. At that instant, the soul scent, barely masked by incense, surged, thick and unmistakable. Kong sensed it drifting in slow circles just in front of the altar. Half dazed, Kong blurted, "Mr. Qiang, do you come every evening to burn incense for your mother?" Qiang said nothing. Instead, he struck a match and lit 2 plain white candles beside the portrait. He drew 3 sticks of incense from a lacquered holder, touched their tips to the flame, and planted them upright in the ash-filled burner. The room shifted almost like a sigh as the scent of sandalwood rose and the strange odor retreated. Qiang's gaze flicked to the incense jar. 3 crimson characters, lignum aloes. The words sparked a memory. This wasn't ordinary temple incense. He recalled that Taoist rituals prized this wood for its power to calm wandering spirits. Rare for a simple home shrine, it felt out of place here, like bringing a cathedral censer to a kitchen table. But Kong swallowed his questions. This was not the moment. Yu slid the completed form across the low table. "Mr. Qiang, if everything's correct, please sign here." Qiang scrawled his name with a steady hand, and Kong reined in his racing thoughts. Camera stewed. Last notes penciled on the plan. Kong turned toward the door, yet as he stepped over the threshold, the air itself seemed to exhale. The oppressive scent vanished, replaced by the gentle perfume of sandalwood and candle wax. He paused. Yu nudged him. "Kong, it's 5:30. Snap out of it. We've got to regroup." She called back. "Thank you, Mr. Qiang, will be going now." They stepped into the twilight street, the gate clanging shut behind them like the final note of a long, uneasy chord. Once the demolition project officially kicked off, Kong was back on site with colleagues, answering residents' questions about the final appraisal. Kong got on famously with Deputy Director Liu, the street office manager in charge of the area. One afternoon, they sat in the makeshift field office, trading small talk over lukewarm tea. On impulse, Kong asked about the Z family, especially the late Mrs. Z from number 16. He even told Liu about the old woman he and Yu had met under the locust tree, the one who by all accounts, should have been dead. Liu listened, eyes widening, then let out a long, sorrowful sigh. As it turned out, Liu knew the family's story better than anyone. Mrs. Z was a special case, Liu said. History left her without a pension, without formal employment. Tragedy piled on tragedy. Her grandson died in that poisoning, and the daughter, in law's mind, never recovered. The entire household lived on the son's factory wages, barely enough to keep rice in the pot. I helped Mrs. Z apply. She was profoundly grateful. I ran every form, every stamp, finally got approval. I came to her door beaming. Ma'am, your allowance is approved. Just wait for the deposit. And then one silent night, she hanged herself in that very room. Liu was stunned. Why, after everything, would she do this? Further inquiries revealed the truth. Late-stage lung cancer. Metastasis already begun. The doctor told her it had reached her eardrums, time measured in weeks. The allowance had been approved, her last earthly worrying eased. Yet she refused to drain the family's meager savings on futile treatment. She chose the fastest exit, a rope, a still, and the night. From that night forward, number 16 began to breathe with an easy life. Liu finished and Qiang sat silent, tasting the bitter irony of fate. When Qiang described the old woman, black spun silk blouse, dark brown trousers, Liu nodded slowly. Exactly what she always wore. Simple garments, threadbare but neat, her lifelong uniform of endurance. Why Qiang had seen her 6 months after death, Liu could not explain. Liu, ever helpful, arranged a private meeting with Qiang, Mrs. Z's son. They recounted the morning encounter beneath the locust tree. With Qiang's blessing, each lit 3 sticks of incense before the portrait. That night Qiang dreamed. Under the same locust tree, Mrs. Z said no word, only smiled, gentle, forgiving. She turned gaze, lingering on the gate of number 16. Exhaled a long breath, then melted into the shadows, beneath the tree, gone. It felt like release, like a burden set down at last. In the months that followed, Qiang passed the site often, now only rubble, a stump, and memories. Never again did he feel that sudden pocket of cold. Never again glimpsed the figure in black. 4 years later, March 2008, Qiang oversaw funding for a new demolition site. There he met director Zhang, nearly 60, a lay Buddhist under vows, disciple to a renowned monk of deep attainment. When Qiang recounted the story, Zhang listened intently, eyes soft with understanding. Zhang explained, the encounter had been possible only because Mrs. Z's attachment in life had been iron strong. Death had not severed the thread. Guilt bound her, guilt for every hardship her family endured. She carried the weight of a childhood stripped of joy, of reunion shattered by one fatal mistake. That remorse clung like ivy, until it loosened. She could not ascend. Perhaps, Zhang said, the old soul sensed in Qiang the rare sensitivity, like a tuning fork for the unseen. Once she saw her son complete the paperwork, the allowance secured, her unfinished business began to unravel, especially after Qiang and Yi returned, incense in hand, and offered respect, 3 sticks each. Zhang gave a thumbs up, a great act of merit. You helped her lay down the final burden. At last, she could go in peace. May her spirit find, at last, the calm that life denied her.